Hey, this is Sean. Longevity with the New Old Heads podcast and bringing down the band. And I'm going to go back to 2019 today and kind of revisit an old segment from the New Old Heads. Crazy, 2019 was like 6 years ago. But the conversation was around genres and if they are relevant. So let's watch this, and I'm going to add some updated commentary to see how wrong I was, or we are, or how accurate we were.
Talking about genres,
right?
The importance of genres in music. Is that important? You know, it kind of piggybacks off what we talked about with the Lil Nas Kid, and we've talked about Post Malone, and we've touched on these things, the culture vulture, blah blah blah. But you know, we had an extensive talk off camera about genres and should certain limitations be added to certain genres.
This is crazy too, because it's like in the early days when we used to just kind of shoot from the hip with our topics. And, you know, this is like year 3 of us doing the show. So I can see Mike has his note cards here of just general ideas of what we're going to talk about. This is crazy because we're so much more organized now.
And who governs this and how should it be looked at? And, you know, we kind of spilled off into a whole bunch of stuff. But Lone, I know you brought up that actual topic. So what was your thinking in terms of saying, like, bringing that topic up about our genres? Like, how important is that, the concept of genres? Like, kind of,
I look pissed.
I guess kind of go into that, because you really did have some good points when we were off camera on that topic.
So there's 2 ways to approach this. One, are genres important?
Yep.
And if they are important, then who is governing over what a genre and what is involved inside of a genre, right? So I think this is also loosely related to like Grammy categorizations, and also how people, entities, I guess, classify genres in particular categories, like who puts who in what. I think my biggest argument these days in 2019, as somebody who has been involved in the distribution of hip-hop media for a very long time now.
That's a fact.
Is that I believe that pop is a genre. And for a long time, I understand where people would say, well, pop is just... It's
popular music.
But I feel like people make music specifically for that reason now. Yeah, see? Head of the time, even back then. I still agree with that. But that's kind of... I think it's more of a common thing now. I think nowadays people just kind of accept that people do make stuff. It's the TikTok music. It's the stuff people just make to go viral. And it just so happens that hip hop is the most popular genre right now. So I come from an angle of, I don't necessarily believe in genres. I understand the idea of categorizing, and I feel like it's important for music in different ways. Yeah, so my belief in general is that there's form versus function, right? So from a general creative point of view, I don't really believe that things need to be categorized, because it kind of takes away from the creative process. Because once you start thinking about what category you want to be placed in, you start to adjust your creativity. And I believe at approaching creativity from less of an analytical point of view and more of a feel point of view. But I also understand from the function aspect how us as humans need categorizations. So, but I feel like it can be abused. And I think that's a direct reference to the Grammys. We have to be conscious of where those abuses can come from, and we have to also target them and point them out. And one of the reasons, part of that is by classifying certain types of music as popular, if that's what it is.
Right.
Okay.
You know, so is Lil Nas X? But is Lil Nas X, is he country? Is he rap, or is he pop?
When I saw SoundCloud.
Yeah, and the answer is back then he was a pop artist that was floating around. He was making country music as a black artist. And a lot of people would classify him as a hip hop artist simply because he was a black artist and he rapped sometimes. So that was where I know I was coming from on that.
I'm coming to you, JDF. When I saw SoundCloud, I saw the hip hop joint right underneath Old Town Road. I'm like, yo, what's going on here? Kind of threw me off, but go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to agree with you to a certain extent, because some genres come about because of other genres that existed before it. So you have hip hop, which is a mixture of soul, jazz in a certain sense, drums, you know what I'm saying, beating drums, all mixed together. Funk,
there
exactly.
It is. Yeah.
That creates a genre.
Shout out to James Brown.
The sound, that's the musical sound of it. The emotion of it is hip hop, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So certain people can embody that hip hop emotion, just like certain people can embody that country emotion, that punk emotion, that rock and roll emotion. You know what I'm saying? Just because you mimic the sound doesn't mean that makes you that particular genre. And speaking on Lil Nas X, he actually has a song he's making now. I think he's kind of trolling now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because now he's making a punk rock song, and he's trying to see if he can get on the rock charts.
Oh, which I think kind of goes to my point there, which was like he's just trying to be popular. You know, like he just wants, like, he's a popular genre. He's trying to be a chameleon. He's not trying to be a particular genre. He's just trying to be popular.
So he's just out here trying to really pick a spot.
I don't think that's what he was doing initially.
Oh,
I think that's what kind of happened
after the success of Old Town Road. Okay.
If you think about it, if that hadn't happened,
yeah,
we probably would have never really picked up on Old Town Road like that.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? So it was almost like a gift and a curse for him.
Can I make a point?
Go ahead.
I feel like part of the issue right now is how we are classifying things with and how people consume. So when we talk about playlisting and everything that is involved in streaming, genres are a lot more important now than maybe they were before, because everything else was just kind of charted.
Yeah.
Right.
And so now it's actually how people listen to music. You know, not that you couldn't go to like a specific section in a record store and do stuff, granted, but it's a little different now because this is overly saturated with what this is. So I feel like it's a lot easier to bastardize that idea of genres if we want to follow it. Can we really say that Lil Nas X is hip hop in one song, country in another, and punk rock in another one? That's a general statement. I'm not saying that he can't. My question is, can he be those three things in three different songs?
Well,
and the answer is yes. You know, I mean, the answer is yes, because it's less about what happens from an individual's, you know, like, well, it's more about like what's happening in the moment. You know, like, I can make hip hop music, but I can also make anything else over here. So, anyways,
jump in, Jay Moore.
I can come at it from a completely different perspective, because I did, you know, have my time in radio and records,
right.
And a lot of this, as far as genres, has been used to separate people. Okay, like any record, you know, when you really go back, that had a black person on it, one time was called race records.
Yep.
Okay, and basically that was a way to say, white people, these records are not for you. Okay, then when we got into the Motown era, at one point you got to understand what was considered the soul or R&B chart. Billboard stopped publishing it because the pop charts were so dominated by Motown artists that they were like, why should we give them another number one on another chart? We're not even going to publish.
Didn't they just make another chart? And like,
that's real.
But then, you know, after at a certain point, they brought it back.
Spools.
But what was crazy, if you go and you do your research and you look through old Billboard magazines,
I miss having Brad on the show.
Or what's published on the internet, they still, up until like maybe 1990 or 91, they didn't call it the R&B chart or the R&B hip hop chart. They called it Hot Black, which just seems ridiculous now.
That's crazy when you think about it.
And so
Shouts to the hot black artists.
But I think a lot of this also
urban, real quick, is also like a common undercover, in my
urban
opinion,
contemporary. I think Terry talked about
characterization.
that.
So,
but I think a lot of this is a way to to say, no, this is for you. You live here. This is for you. You live here. So when you come to the record store here, you know, black kid with a baseball hat on, we'll point you over here. This is the music you listen to. Okay, white kid who has on, the torn T-shirt, we'll paint you in this direction. I almost think now in this streaming era where these kids have access to everything immediately, it has torn down some of those walls. But when we talk about categories, especially when you talk about the pop category, I do agree with Loam. It's not okay, whatever's popular is the pop song, because that's not how they designate it. They say, okay, Ariana Grande and you and Justin, you're the pop singers because your music is directly marketed towards this group of people. And I think all that separation and that old way of thinking, that's when you have the Grammys still. When you see the Grammys and you say best pop vocal.
Yep.
Right.
We joked about it, but it's very true. It's like best white person.
For sure.
Because I remember when Confessions came out and it was just a monster. That's like the Thriller of this millennium.
Great album.
Usher had all these number ones, dominated radio across every category, but he was only nominated for a couple of R&B. He wasn't nominated for the pop category, despite him being the biggest pop star that year. You know, if we want to talk about who's the biggest pop star overall in a streaming era, like, why is Drake never nominated for best pop vocal?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not.
We joke about that too on the show.
That's a great point, man, because he is a pop artist.
So
And people get mad when I say that, but he's a pop artist.
If you're going to talk about
great point.
Pop as talking about, okay, it's short for popular,
Yeah.
then who is more popular really when you look at the numbers than Drake? But
100%.
Our very first episode of the New Old Heads, the very first one we shot back in like November of 2016. It was like right when Trump was coming into office. The very first episode is called Drake is a Pop Star. We've been saying this for years. So it's funny when this, and for a handful of years, every time that this kind of like hinted around, we would just overemphasize the point that he is a pop star. He's a pop rapper. He's pop, pop, pop. And nowadays, you know, after the battle and everything, we were like, yeah, he actually is.
What they do is they've designated, I think there was a time after, I want to say after Michael Jackson won all those awards, they're like, nah, we're not going to have this. So if you skip just a little bit forward to when Bad came out and was just as dominant as far as the chart position, I mean, there was more number ones off of Bad than there was off of Thriller, but somehow he wasn't nominated for those same pop categories. He, you know, I don't
The
think
king of pop.
Yeah, I don't think he won anything for Bad, and it was just as dominant as far as the charts, popularity, and critical acclaim.
This was a crazy time as I sit here looking at myself, looking at my computer, having to monitor everything. This was also before we live streamed cameras. This looks like it's just our GoPro camera before we bought the additional cameras too.
So,
Didn't you say Bad was better than?
oh, I'll stick to that.
Yeah,
I'll
you
have
do.
a conversation
You
with
said Bad
anybody.
is better than what?
That's another
Thriller.
day though.
Or maybe this was when we just used this camera because we had Jay Moore on, because Jay Moore, this was still in the time where Brad was on Spools was on the show.
I think Off the Wall is better than Thriller.
I'm not talking about Off the Wall, but if we're talking about Bad versus Thriller, Bad.
So what do you think about Off the Wall?
Off the Walls is his best piece of work.
Okay,
All right,
cool.
I'm not gonna do this because
So anyways,
I
that's
want
a
to
whole
do that.
nother
We can
show.
do that later.
Yeah.
Spools, I'm coming to you. Here's my question to you because we've talked about the genres. We talked about this. I want to come to you on from a hip hop standpoint, because I always have been the person that has been for splitting hip hop in terms of if it gets to the point where like hip hop has a subgenre of, I don't know, mumble rap or shit like that. Like, to me, it's so muddy now. I wouldn't be opposed to that. To that, you say what?
Well, I'm not necessarily opposed to. Here's my whole thought on the whole thing. I think Sean, or I think everybody kind of hit the nail on the head as far as it is human nature to classify things in some way, right?
Yep.
Now, if we can remove all the like race bullshit that has happened, you know, you can't take the past away, you know what I mean? But if we can, going forward, do that, I think of everything now, especially because of how digital everything is. I think of everything as like a tag now. Like every song, like if you want to be an artist who just does hip hop and I'm just hip hop and that's all I do, then then your music will be tagged as just hip hop then.
For sure.
But if you make a song like I did listen to it, the Lil Nas X, is that the cat's name?
Yeah. Yep.
And it is country and it is hip hop, then that's how it would be tagged. Maybe they don't have to be in like, I think of it as relationships. I'm a business analyst. Like, it's not just you can only be one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a many to many for every song or every piece that you make. I think of Sublime. That is the one of my favorite groups of all time.
Yes.
Period in all
Sublime as
music.
well.
You could put the tag. You could put 4, 5, 6 tags on Sublime.
Yeah, you could.
And that's part of my point. I feel like this is where I feel like I lose people in general. Not saying this necessarily here, but when I say that genres are a thing of the past, I feel like classifying and charting and all this stuff based upon genre is the old way of thinking, and I don't feel like that is the future necessarily. The idea, is it the future? Well, I think genres are still important, and I think playlisting. I don't know where we're at today. I don't know if it's. I don't know. Of tagging is really cool. I feel like we need to get away of charting in general in that aspect. I know we probably won't.
Yeah, because we
That's
just
gonna be a tough
love
sell.
to fucking
Exactly. Because that's just what it's going to be. But if we can get to it's probably possible now with the streaming era to be like, all right, today, this is a country song that I make, or this is a little bit more R&B, or this is you tag it however you tag, it gets listed in a category, people can listen. And you can do that because you essentially can do that on a distribution platform. And I think you probably could back then too. I know you could back then too, because I literally ran a label back then. So, but for every single song, or maybe it was per release, but I'm pretty sure, but for every single song, you could classify it as where it lies. And you had to. That was the other piece of it. Like, you had to classify it as something, how they want to listen. I think it would be great to get away from the tiered top-down approach of what's popular, unless you want to listen to some sort of popular music and whatever. I don't know.
And my
that.
nerd side totally kicks in with this, because let's say you're on your Spotify or whatever. I don't use it, or whatever streaming service you use. You could start using like Logic to pick what you want to listen to that day.
For sure.
Give me music. Right, so you start with all the music on Spotify. Well, it needs to have a tag of. You can get super specific, or
That's
you
what
can
it
get, or you
does,
can get
actually.
really broad.
Yeah.
It's got to have a tag of just hip hop. Cool, you're gonna get millions of songs. All right, it's got to have a tag of hip hop and a tag of something else. Okay,
sure.
then that levels that down. Okay.
What the crazy thing is, what Brad's really kind of describing here is just the way the algorithms work now. It's crazy.
Or you can get even cooler and say it's got to have a tag of hip hop or a tag of whatever.
You can go region. You could do a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
with
man,
it.
and just and then just look at the numbers later after that. I mean, forget about. I agree. Like the whole.
I feel like if they just didn't publish it, you know what I mean? Like if there was just no way, it's just like the like button, you know, like, or the heart. This is crazy. This is crazy that I'm sitting here talking in 2019 about the detriment of the like button and public numbers, because apparently I've always felt this way. And I know that I have, but like, I feel like the last handful of years I've been a lot more adamant about how this stuff is just like, what makes you, it's just, never mind. Or, you know, on social media, if we can get rid of the like button or the heart, then it would make things much more pleasant, even if it was public.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to note real quick, I read very briefly Instagram looked into at one point, but didn't, obviously removing the like button.
And the reason
That'll
why
never happen.
the reason why they didn't is because they found out that with the like button, it increases engagement because it increases people's screen time, because when they post something, they come back to check how many times people like it. So they're not going to do that because it's not good for the business. But realistically, for us as human beings, it is a great idea to get rid of the like button, because then we are just actually being people. I would also take it a step further, that I think maybe from a psychological standpoint, maybe we care more about the like button because it's public, so we want to check to see, like, do I get more likes because people are going to see this? I think that's probably it. But I think if it was private, we would still probably go and check. And I don't really think that there's anything wrong with public likes to understand how many people saw this, how many people liked it. I feel like those are just good analytics. But the public piece adds this whole other component that I don't think is necessary.
Yeah.
Posting things because, hey, I just want to post this.
Not being
not
narcissistic.
hoping for that hit of dopamine every time we see somebody likes it.
And that's exactly what this era is.
When you talk about genres, like, just a lot of this, like, because with the Lil Nas X, It was on the country chart because country stations were playing the record.
Yeah.
And that's what reporting is, and that's how, so what bothered me with that whole thing is like, what was the precedent for them to go ahead and snatch something off? Because if that's,
For sure.
if you know, because I don't want to see anybody. I don't want, for whatever I feel about Post Malone, his songs get played on stations that classify themselves as hip hop or contemporary hits rhythmic. And so his songs, based on their airplay, are supposed to be on those charts. But I feel, you know, for them to do that to Lil Nas X, he was slighted.
That was weak as fuck, dude. That's,
You know.
I mean, I'll go farther. That was super lame. It went on ahead, in my opinion, and just solidified for people who already think that, you know, or that organization or, you know, folks like that are already kind of like racist. Like, it just solidifies the stuff like,
Because
like
it's
I need
like
a precedent. Like, unless I'm wrong, and please in the comments correct us if we're wrong to say that, oh, you know, they've done this on this chart before or they're known for doing it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding to what Jay Moore said, it is a precedent, meaning it's the first time.
So he's had something just snatched off the charts. Because, you know, Sam Smith, when he was on the adult contemporary, when he's on what's called
Jay used to really like to cook on the radio stuff.
adult urban.
The song Royals.
And, you know, when those songs chart, it's just because the audience likes them. That's how they chart in that category. And they deserve to be there based on how they've decided to go ahead and compile the data. You know, once again, I think there should be just, you know, if Lil Nas X is being played more anywhere and he's streaming the most, he should be number one.
Under our current system,
under our
that's
current system,
where he should be.
This is my thing
Yep.
with it, though. It creates a mess. You have all this shit that's just pretty much just being loaded into the system because somebody is like sitting in the room like, I'm going to make this type of song or I'm going to make this type of song.
For sure.
I'm going to put it out right now.
You're totally
and
right.
And it also, this is the reason why you don't get good full albums all the time now.
There we go.
You know what I'm saying? Because people are so in tune with making that one song
There we go.
that's going to take them to the top. Before all this shit existed, people were concentrating on making a good album. But because you couldn't take that CD out. Once you bought that CD, you had to let that bitch ride.
Yeah, and that's the difference in the eras, right? Because CDs don't exist anymore. I mean, they exist, but people, it's even gotten worse. Like we were kind of early on this, but it just eventually got to the point. It has gotten to the point to where albums are for people that have super fans. Now, albums are for artists that either just want to make an album, number one, but like it's really kind of a niche thing for most people. You know, like I love albums. I love listening to stuff front to back. I love to hear that. And I think a lot of, don't get me wrong. Let me rephrase this. I think a lot of people enjoy albums, but I feel like if it's an artist that we don't really have a clear connection with, or we don't know them very much, or we're not a real huge super fan of them, we're okay with just getting bits and pieces of them. And in general, that's just kind of bad for the whole ecosystem of the creative environment of creating like that, because it puts the power into the consumer as opposed to the artist saying, hey, this is my thing. Take some time with this and experience what I'm trying to take you through. Instead, it's the consumer saying, well, this is what I want. And I don't want to experience what you're taking me through. I just want to find the things that I want. And I feel like that's generally bad for humanity.
It wasn't going to the next artist or the next song or the next person that you wanted to listen to.
That's what I was.
You had to listen to a whole body of work. So now it's so diluted to the point where we have to say we don't have genres anymore. And that's what fucks me up. I don't like that shit at all.
Well, you know what?
This is also before we were on the radio and before we could just cuss whenever we wanted.
Just going back and being my music history nerd, there was a time where, okay, what you did, if you were on a record label, you signed a deal, you put out a 45. Okay, if that 45 was a hit, let's put out another 45. We put out another, wow, we got 3 hits in a row. Maybe we'll go ahead and
let's do
put
extended
all these into an LP. You understand, like, the whole album idea of putting out an entire album really didn't come around to the late 60s, early 70s. We were talking about, especially when an album-oriented rock. You know,
Yeah, it's
there
a
were
little earlier than that, but
Look,
not to like nitpick you.
Oh,
but
no, no.
you're right. I follow what you're saying.
you
Like,
know,
still
and so
had to have,
we're
Sam
kind
Cooke.
of,
Like if you look at Sam, I mean, anyway, go ahead.
but we're kind of in that era now because it's like there are guys, they're not even signing album deals, they're signing single deals because why would I waste all this time recording and promoting an album for you where you may have Lil Nas X, this might be the top of the mountain for him.
For sure.
He'll hop on a tour off this one song. Though. That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
this
times
one
change,
song
you know,
will take
I mean-
him out on a tour. Now, to your point, when people making 45s or whatnot, exactly.
Shaq West, that's
He
a good
opened
one.
up for Travis Scott.
Yeah.
He has one hit.
Yep.
You know what I'm
And these are both artists. We haven't heard anything from Lil Nas X. We haven't heard anything from Shaq West. Like, you know, there's just no longevity in the single game from an artist perspective.
saying?
You
He's on the
can't
road.
play it clean.
Nah,
No,
you
can't.
can. I just did it at a basketball tournament.
It's
this
funny.
weekend. Yeah,
It's probably hilarious considering the original.
Oh,
To your point, though, when they were making
And it's a terrible-
45s,
it's a terrible song.
it still had a side of A and a B.
yes.
With one or two songs on each side, and they followed it up with another one. They were able to tour off of that compilation. It wasn't necessarily an album, but they had a whole bunch of hit songs.
Yeah, it was a compilation
I'm
of your
saying?
already released hit songs.
Right. So it's not like this person that's coming out of the blue
Yeah.
that has this hit that everybody's fucking with because the genre's all over the place and it's being played everywhere, but you're only good for one song.
Terry,
You're not focusing these. I guess what I'm trying to say is people aren't focusing on the art of actually making good shit. That's what really
that's gone.
bothers me as far as, and that's why you have to say, oh, well, genres don't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Because
That's-
people
that's
are pretty
one-
much just
Yeah.
piggybacking off whatever sounds good. Let
Yeah.
me make this song, make this bag, so
Yep.
to speak, like you say all the time.
Yep.
Get this bag, and you may not ever make another hit. Back in the day, that was a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
If you dropped a dope song and your album was trash, it's a wrap for you, buddy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We'll still play this song, but nobody's checking
Think
for
about
you.
the 69 Boys. You remember Whoop There It Is? Like
Yeah.
that record was, I remember being a kid like, yo, this is crazy. Like this joint is very, very successful. My cousins had it.
Jock
blah, 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 blah.
jams.
But it's
I
different.
never heard
but
anything else after that.
But again, technology changes because people
Shout out
are
to Jock Jams too.
people have direct access to these people now, so they can hear this one song and then go find that person, and then boom,
Yeah.
it's more about who this person is on their social media presence. Then if
Yeah.
you don't have that back then, you just had to make another good song.
Yep.
Now you don't have to. You can be like, "Oh, got your attention."
That's to me.
Gotcha,
That's
bitch.
whack. though.
Now you can get on my Instagram. You can follow my Twitter.
To me,
Real
that's
quick,
whack.
And that's really all it is. That's crazy. I mean, still, we've talked about this. I feel like we've concurrently talked about this on the show for the last almost 8 years, almost 9 years. But it's like, it's really just about grabbing people's attention. If you can grab people's attention, then you can sprinkle out the stuff that you like. But it's just like Kaisenet just did this streaming university thing. It looks like chaos. And it's just a whole bunch of people just looking for people's attention. It's just like hoeing out for people's attention. And that's what music has turned into.
I wanted to follow up to what Terry said.
Get on
Like,
my Instagram.
I agree with what you're saying to the point where it's taking away from making good music being the most important thing. It's almost like I need to stand out. I think about it like
and this social media in general.
it's tough to. I think about it in a really really nerdy way, but it's like, what are these other things we can do that'll make us, for example, like search engine optimization, like
Yep.
pop up to the top. Like
There it
we're not
goes.
we're not the
Oh,
best
it is.
company, but what's going to make us noticed by everybody?
That's
so
all
that,
it's about right now.
Yeah,
Every
that's-
algorithms. Everything is
and what we
manipulation.
were talking about, the tagging.
Yep.
Doing it just the way we mentioned it wouldn't solve that. But I bet if we put our heads together,
I mean,
and we-
essentially, the tagging,
could.
that's just like keyword search.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
that's
saying?
exactly
That's
right.
all it
Yeah.
is.
But
Country
what it
rap
does is
tune.
it eliminates genres and saying you're just this.
But
Well,
then
it's-
the
it's-
trick with
it's-
that is because
It's less genres, though. It's more so the reporting of the genres and
Yeah.
the charting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Correct,
people are
correct.
going to try to, even with tags, SEO or what to speak,
People still going to
they're
try.
going to try to put that
Absolutely.
tag on their song
Hell yeah.
regardless,
Yeah.
because they want to be
Dude,
pop up wherever the fuck they can
people
pop
who
up.
make videos about reviewing their new Remington gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put hashtag kittens so their shit pops up. I totally get it. It's the same equivalent.
And the
So,
thumb I will say that the algorithms have gotten better at being able to figure out when people are trying to manipulate the such. You know what I mean? It's just like the same. Like you go to YouTube and it's just like a picture of a woman with like her titties out or whatever. It's just like that stuff really doesn't exist anymore as far as like clickbait. I mean, kind of sometimes, but you have to be very, very clever with it. So.
And you're right, dude. Yeah.
Thumbnail images of a naked woman. Yeah, there we go.
And maybe all of this is why 𝗕𝗥𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏
at that.
That must have been a
full
previous
It could be the
topic.
case. I think we've all touched on it at some point, but I think to your point, Terry, like the oversaturation, like you get so much bullshit to me just because of this algorithm or whatever you want to call it. Like there's so much bullshit that comes out now. It's like, yo, whatever's Dakota's hashtag, I'm just gonna put that out so I can be popular real quick. And
the crazy thing is hashtags don't even work anymore. Like hashtags are not even really a thing. Now the algorithms are so good, it can just look at your video and pick up on what people are saying and what's on the screen and everything. So
as a result, we get a lot of bullshit to weed through.
don't get me wrong, Instagram and YouTube I know specifically do crack down on all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just so
The
abundant.
kitten shit is funny too because like I see people post the most random stuff on YouTube just to get somebody to come there.
Well, dude, I will say a very close friend of mine who was a hip hop artist. used to,
He must be trash.
no, not at all.
Okay.
He's fantastic. He just hasn't done anything in a while. But
All right.
when I was working with him heavily years ago, we used to do that shit, dude. He told me, he was like, dude, put hashtag kittens and hashtag, whatever else was popping. And I was like,
All right.
Yeah.
Hell, Soldier
Sounds
Boy
like something
used to.
Scoot and I would do.
Soldier Boy used
Shout
to
out to Scoot Dub.
put. He used to put his songs up, but would put them as 50-cent songs. So when people were downloading them off of LimeWire, they would get his songs.
Oh
instead.
yeah, that was
actually genius.
It worked.
a lot of people was doing that
but we
shit.
cannot reward fucking
that's
behavior
ignorant.
like that, or the music, or do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah,
They
no,
do that
exactly.
exact thing on
You know.
YouTube. It's just crazy that
You can get docked on YouTube for that. I've been looking
Yeah.
into it.
Word.
Yeah, if you put the wrong people, you'll get judged based on your thumbnail images, your hashtags, your titles, all that stuff. So
it's just crazy to think that we'll never have a Prince and
Nah.
Michael Jackson,
Nah.
and Marvin Gaye.
Nah.
we might. We just might
it's
get
gonna
lost to
it's
find
gonna
them
be
in the
different.
genres.
It's gonna be in a different
We're only going to
format.
listen to their album for a week.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy foreshadowing by Jay there at the end. Only listen to their album for a week. It depends if we really, really like them. So yeah, that's a flash to the past. Talking about genres. I don't know if I have anything else more to really contribute to that outside of the, I miss being on a show with Brad and the perspectives that he brought and everything. But I think there's a place for categorization. And I think the conversation has shifted a little bit to be less about genres and stuff like that, and more so just the apparatus of what is categorizing everything, such as, the streaming platforms and the algorithms just being, I guess maybe that's just a further conversation of it about how it's not necessarily, to think about it, genres didn't go away, but genres also, that wasn't the main conversation. What we were kind of hitting around here was, about the algorithms. And now the algorithms and the For You algorithms that have started to populate, and how all these platforms are using the algorithms are now really conducting what we see. And it's all consumer based. It's not based on the creator. So we were kind of talking about something that was relevant, but kind of to the side a little bit. So yeah. Oh wow, that's crazy. That was 6 years ago. Check out the New Old Heads. New episodes every Thursday at noon. I think we're on episode 438 coming up this week. If you want to get the uncut 2-hour show, we typically only release an hour of it to the public. But if you want the uncut 2 hours, it lives on our Patreon at patreon.com/newoldheads.